Good evening, everybody. My name is Kristen Connolly. I am honored to be the Contra Costa County Clerk Recorder and Registrar of Voters. Welcome to night 3 of 3. This is our third candidate workshop that we've done this week, and we are thrilled to share the information that you need in order to successfully qualify and run for office. And so, because this is an important component of the work of the Elections Division, and it can be really intimidating. I've been a candidate a couple times over, 2 different scales. Running for school board is very different than running county-wide, but there are lots of hoops that are the same and things to think about to get us started. So we have a packed agenda with lots of great speakers, but we want this to be really interactive. But I do want you to know we are recording this with Contra Costa TV so that we can add it to our videos that we have available for folks. So, just know that if you're a speaker tonight, use the microphone. And then we're going to be passing the microphone when you have questions so that we can capture all of that this evening. And we do have 2 of our speakers tonight are going to be joining by Zoom. And so that have great content to share with all of you. But I do want to just thank you for coming, and thank you for thinking about, and thank you in advance for actually running for office. It's an incredibly important way to contribute to the community, whatever your community is. And if you're thinking about running for, a small town council or a small school board, great. If you're thinking about running for a bigger office that's maybe 1/5 the size of the county, awesome. We are here to help. So I know that I first ran in 2018, and so I know what it's like to fill out all the forms and think about filling out your Form 700 financial disclosure. I know my husband was very reluctant, like, why should do we have to do this for you to run for office? And we're trying to make everything accessible, have it make sense to you, and have it be a little less scary. So, and I'm not gonna lie, the first person to email us after our workshop on Saturday was like, actually, I decided not to run. So that was a little hard to take, but he did want to participate in our November cohort of our Certified Election Observer Program. And so we'll get to that in a minute. So I did want to just, we have several staff that are here in the audience. And so some of them are going to speak and some of them are not going to speak. So, but I did want to just acknowledge Melissa Hickok, who is my assistant who helped put everything together. So thank you, Melissa. Very, very, very good work. And Don Kruger, who's our outreach and media coordinator, who is just fantastic. So thank you very much, Don, for all your great work. But I know making the transition from serving on a nonprofit board to being an elected official was an important way for me to serve the community, and that might be where you're at in your life. But we're at various stages, we're going to talk about lots of different pieces of the puzzle. But before we get to that, we're going to have a couple presentations from my staff to help you understand a snapshot about what the March election looked like. And so to do that, I have the honor of introducing Assistant Registrar of Voters who leads the Election Division, Helen Nolan.
Thank you, Kristen. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm echoing Kristen's words with a thank you for taking your time. We appreciate you being here and listening to what we have to say. So my job is to give you a few updates about the March election. In March, out of our 710,000 registered voters, we saw a return of 269,000 people who voted. That's about 37% return. Of those returns, 92% were vote-by-mail ballots. Of those vote-by-mail ballots, 35% were returned on Election Day or mailed on Election Day of our 269,000 ballots. So coming up in November, we're expecting about an 85 to 90% turnout. If trends stay the same, which we expect that they will, 92% of those ballots will be vote-by-mail, so about 650,000, and 35% of those tend to be returned on Election Day or mailed on Election Day, nearly the amount that we processed in total for March. That's a huge, huge number of vote-by-mail ballots coming into our office all at once. And I say all that to say this. If you can do one thing for us is encourage your supporters and your constituents to vote early. we can get their ballot in, get it counted, and we can return those results on election night at 8 p.m. with your name. That's my plea. A few more updates about March. In March we had 40 drop boxes. We now have 43. We have added 3 more at our Contra Costa community colleges. We're very excited about that. We had 31 ballot types. We expect closer to 100. We hired 894 poll workers. We're expecting to hire 1,200 for November. And we hired 62 seasonal staff to work in our office, and we're expecting to hire upwards of at least 100. So we are moving by leaps and bounds towards bigger and better, more volume, more people, more processes, more moving parts. So I thank you for your time very much. I will hand it back to Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. So one of the things that we're doing this year with the help of some grant dollars that we earned as being part of a cohort of the Centers for Elections Excellence, which meant $2 million for our office to supplement what it is we're doing to support voters. And it really very few strings attached, the only string being we couldn't replace things that the county was already investing in. This had to be new investments. And so one of the things that we're doing is a trust in elections campaign that we think is the most ambitious local campaign to build trust in elections in the country. And so here to talk about that work and an important piece of our work called the Certified Election Observer Program, I'm pleased to bring up the Deputy Clerk Recorder, Tommy Gong.
Great. Thank you very much. So here's a question for you. Why do we do elections? Why do we conduct elections? To elect our local leaders, our state leaders, our national leaders. All of the above, and also for our local measures, right? And so in order to do so, and it's selected by the will of the voters, right? The voters are the ones who are voting. And so what's very important is that there is a trust and faith in the election process and the results that happen as a result, right? So during the course of an election, there are going to be winners and there are going to be those who don't win, okay? And that in a peaceful, in a well-functioning democracy, for and having a peaceful transfer of power, that those who don't win acknowledge that and be able to recognize the results of the election, and that it reflects the will of the voters. So we're embracing that maxim, and in educating the public about what we do during elections. So who here knows everything there is to know about when we conduct elections? You might know we receive a... I don't know everything, even then. But I'll just say that there are a myriad of processes and procedures that take place during the course of an election, and that the public knows very little of what we do. You may be putting a ballot into a ballot box, but everything that's happening beneath the surface of the level of the water is what's actually making everything that happens. And we like to say that voting is just the tip of the iceberg of everything that we perform, and all of the procedures, the processes, the laws that we're required to follow in conducting elections. And so it's incumbent upon us to educate the public about what we do, so that if there's any questions that come up about an election, about a process, vote by mail voting, drop boxes, voting in person, that we can answer those questions. And we're actually being more forward about educating the public now about elections. So in working with a local public relations firm, they helped us perform a survey of our voters, and it ended up being about 1,250 voters. And one of the questions was, what would be the top 3 things that would improve your trust in elections? And these are the top 3. monitoring by independent, nonpartisan election observers, having people actually observe the process who are not tied to a campaign or a measure, a nonpartisan website where we're explaining all of the processes and the election procedures, and then information about how elections work and how ballots are counted. And so we really have taken this to serious, and so we've created a campaign by educating the voters. This is something we really haven't done before in the past. There's always been like outreach to, let's say, high school students to get them registered, but here we're really trying to educate the public. And so we're actually going to have an ad campaign, social media, and using postcards like this, or actually postcards are in your booklet. Okay. That shows you kind of the messaging that was developed in terms of educating the public about the things that we do when we're performing elections. We're going to have ambassadors, social media ambassadors and community ambassadors. And it was really interesting of those that have that are ambassadors right now, that it covers the entire county. It's all regions of the county, all different people who speak different languages and represent different groups. So we're really excited about this. This is something that we think will really help move the needle in terms of awareness and trust in the election process. And then the other thing is we have a coalition of Bay Area election officials where we're actually working together with our neighboring counties to be able to have a uniform messaging in terms of educating the public. So this is one website that I really want to steer you to. We developed a website as the information was guiding us, all about election processes and all of the safeguards that we have during the election. So it's secure-election.org. secure-election.org. And it's kind of a one-stop shop for all of the procedures that we perform, answers questions, has some video testimonials of people who have observed what we've done. So we highly recommend that candidates look at this so they understand the procedures that we do. And as I said, it has all kinds of video libraries to explain all of the processes that are performed. Then lastly, we have what we call our Certified Election Observer Program. It's only a couple years old, also known as our CEO program for very important people who come to observe. And it's a commitment, let me just say, because it's not just one afternoon of observation. It's actually up to 4 days of observing during the process of the elections season, so to speak. We have people come in to observe our logic and accuracy testing of our voting equipment, so that they can see what are the procedures we do to be sure that the equipment is counting properly. They come in to see the signature verification that happens during our vote-by-mail processing and open those envelopes and prepare the ballots for counting and the counting itself. And so it really does provide a insider's view of all the things we do during the election, and it really is impactful when you're there, when you're seeing it in our office, when you really see us perform the work and the volume that we have. Particular day, we might have 50,000 ballots all of a sudden to process that we picked up from the post office and from our drop boxes. So it's something that we highly encourage people to observe, to sign up for, and provides all kinds of information to them, fact sheets, infographics to really explain the process to people. It is limited in number. We can only handle about a dozen people at a time, but we have noticed now as we train these folks and they become more aware of what we do, they become our ambassadors now as well for our community. And this is kind of the proof of the pudding is our before and after testing to measure their trust. So green is trust a lot, blue is trust some, yellow is distrust some, light blue is distrust a lot. And this was before they took the course, and this is after. And as you can see, the green bars are much more prevalent. And the top two are Contra Costa specific, and the bottom two are across the nation. So when you do surveys, you recognize that people who live in your county, they have a higher degree of trust of their elections office doing everything right. But because of some of the mis and disinformation on the media, then they don't trust what's happening on the other side of the country, for example. And so it's something we're really proud of, and we really encourage you that if you do have any questions about the election process, we do encourage you to contact us so that we can explain the process to you. So we're your trusted source of information when it comes to elections. And so instead of becoming victimized in a way to some of the mis and disinformation, feel free to contact our office so that we can walk you through the steps. Thank you.
Okay, great. So this is when I pause and I tell you, again, this is meant to be informal. We do have food to the side. And if you have had a first course and there might be room for a second course, we do not want to go home with any of this food. So please get up, have a cookie, have a bag of chips, have a sandwich. We had Sunrise Bistro pastries on our first workshop in Lafayette on Saturday, and I was pleased with the progress we made. Yeah, you had a question? Hold on. This is like old school Phil Donahue for those of you who, it's like, let me not trip anybody. I think it'll be long enough.
If you're expecting 80 to 90% turnout in the fall with like 10% ballots returned on election day, how long do you expect the processing to take, the counting of ballots to take?
That is an excellent question, right? Because in general, right, what Helen was talking about is that we get a month to do the first half of the work, and then we have, this really compressed time frame. So what we typically do, and the folks on my team can set me straight if I speak ill here, but typically what we do is we will release results on election night, and we will announce to the public when we expect to release our next set of results. Without going into the details, we are required to report to the Secretary of State the number of ballots we have received that are not yet processed. And so that information stays out there. But because we accept ballots up to and including 7 days after, if they are postmarked by election day, but we receive them up to 7 days after, they have to be processed and counted. So, as a candidate, basically, I had a really good idea of what the elections results look like by Friday, because we have a batch that we release on election night, and we'll release results again on the Friday after the election. But we also prepared for, and in 2022, our office, this is back before I was a part of the office, I was just a candidate then, we had 2 recounts because we had 2 very close races. So, and we anticipate that trend to increase as we have more and more cities and towns going to district elections. So, but the saying goes that as an election official, I'm looking for high turnout and wide margins, right? That makes our lives easy when there are wide margins, but we're prepared for any scenario, no matter how close it is. Does that get to your question? Okay, cool. Did you want to add anything to anything I said? Going back to Helen's message of vote early. Any other questions before we move on? Yes. Oh, do you want to comment? No, water. Water. Okay, I can get you one of those. Yes, I will do that. Thank you. So, probably the panel that you're anticipating the most is next. So, they're all great. But what we're going to do is we are thrilled to have such a great partnership emerging with all of our city clerks around the county. And we've included them and leaned on them during this process of our workshops. And all the biographies of all of our speakers are in the booklet that you got tonight. So I'm not going to spend time doing big introductions, but our next panel is really about the nuts and bolts of filing for office. So I want to bring up an all-star from our team, one of the people I had a relationship with as a candidate, was like, my email relationship with Jacob. So I want to bring up our election services manager, Jacob Stoll from Candidate Services. Come on up. And I want to bring up the city clerk of Pinole, Heather Bell. Oh, right. I just promoted Jacob from supervisor to manager, and it's on TV. No, sorry. Election Services Supervisor, Jacob Stoll.
Okay, good evening. Thank you all for coming. So my name is Jacob Stahl. I'm the Candidate Services Supervisor. I'm going to go over candidate filing in a nutshell. I'm going to try my best to cover a little bit of everything. Heather is going to take over and talk a little bit about the city's role in filing, but there's a lot of overlap. So we might touch on some of the same things. There might be some things that are specific to each of us. So to start off, if you guys are interested, and I hope you will become candidates, the first step is to actually come down to our office and pull papers. So if you're running for a school or a special district or a state office, or if you're running for a federal office, you're going to come into our county's building and pull papers. And what you're going to end up doing is filling out a form. We're going to go over all the documents that we're going to give you. You're going to take those home, schedule an appointment to come back and file those. So when you come back is when you're going to fill out whatever remains. Typically, that's the declaration of candidacy. That's the form that actually tells us the name that you want on the ballot and the ballot designation that you want to use. So there are supporting documents in this. Some of the ones we hand you to take out is like the ballot designation worksheet, your candidate statement, things like that. So a candidate statement is typically 250 words. It's basically block format. It's going to go in the VIG. It will get translated into Spanish and traditional Chinese. I'm being moved. No, you're fine. But the goal for these is to try to have us go over all the documents with you, explain them as best we can. We can't provide legal advice. We cannot help you fill out some of the FPPC documents, which are going to get touched on in a later segment. But we're going to try to make it as easy as we can and as open as we can for you. So when you come back in for that appointment, again, you're going to fill out your declaration to candidacy. That's kind of the seals the deal. That's where you get to take your oath of office, that you're going to be a candidate. You're going to tell us your ballot designation, your name as you want it to appear on the ballot, which doesn't have to be your registered voter name. It can be a different name that you're known for in the community. But that's kind of the last step. And so at that point, you're going to be qualified. There is a caveat. I know the cities have some other additional requirements, like nominations. There might be a process fee for it or a filing fee, but that's not the case for most of the special districts and most of the school districts. Nomination signatures, they're easy. Don't forget your own name. Your own signature counts. That's one out of the 20 that you might need. If you have relatives or family members that live with you that are 18 registered voters, please coerce them into signing your nomination documents. If you can't convince your family that to back you, it's going to be harder for you to get some of those other 20 signatures you need. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather. She's going to touch a little bit on the city side, and then we can take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacob. Good evening, everyone. As he mentioned, I'm Heather Bell. I'm the Pinole City Clerk, and I've been there for 5 years. Before that, I was the Deputy City Clerk in City of Vallejo for 3 years, so I've seen my share of elections. But before I start, I just want to recognize the fantastic staff that is the County Elections and Clerk Recorder Department. I just want to point out that I think we're extraordinarily lucky to have this staff and to be running in this county. You have a really wonderful team, and every time I put down the phone or I come away from an email from this staff, I just think, oh my goodness, we are so lucky because they're just really amazing. So I want to thank you, and of course anything I can do to support this team, I'm just very happy to be here and to help with this workshop tonight. So and so, yes, our processes are very similar. I did bring with me tonight, because I participated a couple years ago, and some of the questions we got were around, the specific requirements for if you want to run for a city council seat through the city. So I'll just start by saying, if you're interested in running for office, your first stop really should be the city clerk's office. One of the questions we got last time was, when do you do that? So I think the answer to that question is now. So for the November election, typically city clerks will start taking appointments. Similarly, we like to schedule an appointment to pull papers officially, and then also to schedule an appointment to submit those papers that you pull. I like to schedule about an hour just to make sure we have time to go through all the paperwork, any questions that you have, and just talk about all the specific requirements for the city. So I think most city clerks sort of operate in that way. So as I mentioned, you want to schedule an appointment. The nomination period this year is July 15th through August 9th. So vote early. Also, pull your papers early, submit your papers early. The last thing that the county wants is to have a lot of late submissions. So I always recommend that the earlier on in that month period that you can pull your papers, the better. And then try to get those back in as soon as you can. I mean, sometimes it takes a week to get signatures. Maybe it'll take you 2 weeks, but you definitely don't want to be filing your paperwork at the end or even in the last week, I would say. So there's, I brought my binder with me. I'm gonna highlight just a few of the things that I think will take a little bit of the mystery out of what it is that you're going to be looking at. So one of the things is the nomination paper. So when you're talking about a nomination paper, how many of you guys have heard of that or know sort of what that entails? Okay, so good. So I'll just pull it out to show you. So it basically looks like this. And so what you'll see is, so for the city of Pinole, we require 20 signatures. And so as Jacob was mentioning, you're gonna circulate your paper. You'll have someone designated circulating it for you. You have folks that will sign it. They have to be registered voters, so that's an important detail. And so what happens is when you are done completing your signatures and you turn it in at the end, the county will then verify your signatures. And so what they're doing is they're checking to make sure that they are, in fact, residents of your city and that they're registered voters. So I just wanted to kind of show you what that looks like. That's one of the papers that you'll be looking at when you meet with your city clerk. There's only about 5 of these, so let me just get through them. The ballot designation worksheet. And so this is a really important form that you'll fill out. It basically is going to indicate for the county how you want to appear on the ballot. And there's all sorts of rules and regulations about, what you can use, what titles you can use and what you can't. So you'll have to provide some documentation in some cases or an explanation of the ballot designation that you use. And so this should be your primary vocation. But the form has actually expanded so that you do have to put quite a bit of information just to kind of show your city clerk and your county representative, why is it that you are justified in using this ballot designation. So any questions about those 2 forms so far? Yes.
Those are city forms or those are county?
So these are forms that are issued by the county. They provide examples, but the city clerk serves as the filing officer and the elections official. So you will be turning those into us if it's a city race and you're running for city council or treasurer, for example. If it's a county race, then you would be then submitting it.
Yeah. So the requirement for these documents is across the board. So the nomination form, in the county's case, if it's a special or school district, the form's going to look slightly different, but it has the same required material on both forms. So special district would be like a water, a sanitary district. You could have community service districts, right? Fire protection. Yeah, so that's what I mean by special districts. It's a group of them, essentially. Like Crockett Community Service District is a special district. Central Sanitary is a special district. East Bay Mud is probably the most common one that people all know. But then you have your schools, which would be high school, union, elementary schools, college districts, things like that. But then the ballot designation, in this case, it's going to be the same form for both of us. You're allowed a primary and then 2 alternates. Typically, the primary is the one that people would choose and write on their declaration of candidacy, but you have to justify it. So it has to be your primary occupation, vocation, or profession. There's special rules in it. Again, we go over this form when you pull it, but you're allotted 3 words separated by slashes. So you could say father/business owner, right? Would be 3 words. You'd have to justify that you're a father and you'd have to justify that you're a business owner. But that's an example. You could also say councilwoman/grandmother or councilwoman/mother, right? So there's there's special rules around it, but it's a form that you fill out, and this really just helps you fill out your DC. But this is required, and it will be a public document that somebody could view or purchase after filing closes.
No, that's okay. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, do we want to pass the mic for the question?
Sorry.
Thank you. It's just a tiny question. So these forms, we should be scheduling appointments now. So I'm interested in a county office, a county position. Scheduling appointments now. Those forms are not available until July 15th.
You're the best, Don. So for the county standpoint, we don't need an appointment. You can walk in if you want. But the filing starts on the 15th, and that's when you would walk in and pull it. So in terms of the actual county positions, are we talking school or special district or specific to the county?
The county board of education.
Okay, so it'd be a school district. But yeah, you would come in.
The county. It's a special county office.
Yeah, so the county board of education, right? So it's treated as a school district, but you would come into us and pull the papers. You wouldn't need an appointment for it. You could show up on the 15th or later if you want. But again, we want to reiterate, the earlier you do it, the better, the easier it is. Especially for like nomination signatures, we check these as they come in. So if we have a stack of 5 candidates that we're working through, you're going to be the 6th person we check. Signatures only count once, so the first signature in is the one that's counted. If you're running for multiple people are running and one person signed 2 different nomination documents, the first one in would count. The second one in would not. If they were running for the same race, right? The same voter could sign 2 different people if they covered from 2 different areas. But if they're running for the same race, the first signature in would count, and that's why we want to encourage those to get filed sooner. You can submit more than 20. So recommended 30, right, for city offices. And so
I'll just expand on that. So we require 20 for your paper to get validated. For cities, yes, and please remember when I'm speaking, it's for cities, and also you should check in with your own jurisdiction to make sure that some people don't require an appointment. I'm giving you an overview of sort of what we do. A lot of city clerks operate in the same manner, but you want to check in with your jurisdiction and what their requirements are. But we in our nomination paper we suggest and recommend to get 30 signatures. That way, if your first 20 don't all qualify, then you have some extra. And if you get 30 and you still don't get 20 qualifying signatures, we would then, through the city clerk's office, issue you a supplemental paper, and then you would have to resubmit that to the county, which is the reason why we say do it early. Because if for some reason you get some signatures that are not valid, you have the opportunity and the time to go back and make sure that you qualify in time. So if you turn it in on the last day and it's still being looked at by the county, and you find that you don't have all the signatures, the deadline is the deadline. So we want you to make sure you have ample time. But that is a really good point that, I'm speaking for the city of Pinole, and kind of you really want to talk to your specific clerk or your filing officer to make sure that you're getting the right information. Any other questions on those two? How are we doing on time? We're good? Okay. No. We're good. Okay, we can go very quickly. I was just going to also highlight some of the other forms that are kind of crossover from the county and the cities. The candidate statement of qualifications, which is really the statement that you're talking about your qualifications that you can choose to have printed in the voter education guide that gets, or information guide that gets sent out by the county. And you should be prepared to pay that fee when you come in and file that paperwork. So that is one important one that also is going to take a little time for you to work on. And then the declaration of candidacy, which is it's a pretty simple form, but it officially declares. And so there's all kinds of other forms. I have this here. I could pass it around if anybody wants to take a look, just to kind of get an idea of what you're going to be looking at when you come in for these appointments. Also, most cities and a lot of the jurisdictions will have the former year's candidate guide. So if you wanted to go and take a look at things as well online, just go to the jurisdiction that you are looking at, and I'm sure you can find those resources there. And then my key advice is the same as yours: early for everything, especially your FPPC. When you get that guidance later on in the presentation, just make sure you kind of have a plan on what you're going to do fundraising wise, because that does affect which forms you file, and when you do that is important. So that was my last piece of advice.
Yeah. So it's all good advice. In terms of the candidate guide, we're going to have that up on our website. That'll include the candidate statement fees for each district. So if you wanted to go out and look at that, it has the word count limit. It has the cost. Again, it gets printed in English, Spanish, and traditional Chinese. It'll get sent to every voter in your district that's registered. So it's a wonderful source to get your name and your voice out. Okay. Follow-up questions? Fabulous.
Thank you so much, Jacob and Heather. Really appreciate you. So what we're doing in the next panel is covering important disclosure requirements that you have. And some of you are at different stages. I know some of you have filed your committee or tried to do that, and some of you don't even know what we're talking about. And that's the point. We're trying to demystify and give you all the information that you need. So we're going to have two people come up here up front. So we have Tom Debert from NetFile, and we have Olga Hernandez, who's a candidate services elections specialist. And I'm very fond of Olga. She was the first person I connected with in our office in terms of dealing with my own candidacy. So she's always going to be in the pantheon of special. And then we actually have a panelist from the Fair Political Practices Commission, the FPPC, joining us by Zoom. And so you can wait. Hi, Alex. And so what we're going to do, the order here is we're going to hear from Tom first from NetFile, go to Alex from the FPPC, and Olga's batting cleanup to answer any questions. So, I think I just want you to be open that you're hearing a lot of information. And if it feels overwhelming, that is normal. But we're here to answer those questions, and it's really important information for you to have. So here's Tom.
Well, thank you very much. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to queue up Alex to speak to some of the legal portions of this. My part of this process is I have a company that deals in electronic filing for campaign disclosure statements. And depending on which jurisdiction you're running for office in, you may or may not be required to electronically file. So if a lot of you in here are running for office at a city or a town, you need to check with your city clerk or your town clerk to find out if you're required to file electronically, okay? They may use our system, they may not. They might have another system that they're using, and they will give you that information. The great thing about city clerks, and Heather's one of them, is that they are awesome. They know their stuff better than anybody else, and they'll assist you every step of the way. Now, if you're running for a county-wide office, so Board of Supervisors, you're in a school district, a special district, then you are required by ordinance to electronically file if you have a committee established for yourself. And there's requirements for establishing a committee that Alex is going to speak to here in a minute. But fundamentally, if you do have a committee, you would use our system to electronically file your documents. The great thing about it is we assist you and we help you. We even provide free filer application training one-on-one. We do it virtually. We schedule it with you, and we actually show you how to use the electronic filing system. Again, if you're filing to the county, I just want to make sure that you understand the difference. It is an ordinance requiring you to use the electronic filing system. The nice part about an e-filing system fundamentally is We help you prevent making mistakes. The system does all the math for you. The system places the actual activity on the proper schedule. So once you do your data input, you request it to provide you with a draft document, and you review it. And when you're happy with the results, you e-file it. So it's very simple. And I know we're running short on time. There's going to be the ability to answer questions at the end. But let me kick it off to Alex, because I know she's got a lot of ground to cover and there's a lot of legalese in there. And the cool part about it is Alex knows what she's doing. She's been with the FPPC for a long time. So you're really fortunate to have her talk tonight.
Thank you, Tom. Can you see the screen? Is my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Don. And thank you for having me. It's hard because I can't see everybody, but thank you for having me. We like, as we call it, even if it's Zoom, we like getting out of the office. So tonight, instead of doing a full candidate treasurer seminar or webinar that we do, I've put together just basically a getting started for those of you that are just getting started. Even if you're running again, just a little refresher on the very first few forms that you have to fill out with the when you're running for local office, but there are forms with the FPPC. Okay. All right, I always give a little bit tiny history on the Fair Political Practices Commission. So basically after Watergate in 1974, a ballot measure was created and it was passed by the people. And so when that passed, the Fair Political Practices was created. And what we do is we implement and enforce the act. And we're all about accountability and transparency. So what we're going to go over today, and I know I'm talking fast, but I'll be around for questions. So we're going to go over the forms that you'll do when you're getting started, getting the committee ID number, filing schedules, candidate and treasurer responsibilities, obtaining a bank account, record keeping, and resources. The first form all candidates fill out is a Form 501. It's the candidate intention statement, and you fill this out for every election. When you are running for office, all public officials have to file a Form 700 in California. But in addition, if you are a candidate, you also have to fill out a candidate 700 statement of economic interest. If you're staying under $2,000 and not forming a committee, it's fine. That's a Form 470, so 501 and 470. If you intend to spend or receive $2,000 or more, you do the 501 and a 410, and that is creating a committee. The 501, straightforward. First thing you do before spending or receiving any money, it's basically just your name. And if you're a local candidate, you don't even have to deal with part 2, and it's you sign it and you mail it or deliver it to your local elections clerk. And so if you're having a fundraiser on Saturday night and you turn this in on Friday, you're all good to go. Postmark is fine, or personal delivery. Here's our candidate Form 700. I only have a copy of the cover page. So, but your Form 700 candidate statement is due no later than the declaration of candidacy. Also goes to your local clerk. Okay, we have the Form 410. This is when you're going to form a committee. That's $2,000 or more is a qualification to have to form a committee. If you want your number ahead of time, what you do is in the top left corner, you do your initial not yet qualified, and that's fine. And make sure a candidate, just a tidbit on the 410, you need to have a treasurer. You can be your own treasurer. There's also a spot for assistant treasurer. If you, we encourage candidates to put themselves as an assistant treasurer in the event that things are getting kind of crazy and hectic, that your treasurer's out of town or something, you can sign as treasurer. So it's just a tidbit on the 410. If you're doing an initial 410, because you just want your number, just put pending under the financial institution. And then you are a candidate controlled committee and you are done with the form. well, it's number 4. Anyway, you can only be one type of committee. So you're done if you're a candidate after you fill out your controlled committee information. So you send your 410 to the Secretary of State as a local candidate because it's the only form that you're going to send to the state because they are the only ones that issue the ID number. So sometimes they're 3, 4, 5 days out. You can go on and search to, they will send you a letter, but as soon as they hit enter on your information, it does show up online. Cal Access is a little hard to find. Either ask your local clerk or you can call us at any time and we will assist you in finding that number. Because in the event, because everybody wants their number, even though because everyone because they think it looks official. And in the end, the number not getting the number doesn't stop you from doing anything, just so you know. The number actually only has to go on the 460s, but if you want it on your political advertisements because you think it looks official, it's totally fine. Everybody does it because everyone else does it. So there's a campaign bank account rules that you must have a separate bank account. So there's no naming requirements. It can be a personal account. It's so however you can get some sort of just separate banking account. Start out by just putting money into it at the beginning, like maybe give yourself a loan, and that way you start paying from your campaign account right from the get-go. And because the no commingling of the campaign funds and personal funds. So on contributions, why is this under bank account? Sorry. For some reason there's PowerPoint ghosts all the time. So we have contributions of 100 or more. Anonymous. I'm really sorry. Shoot, somehow there's something wrong with this slide with the contributions. I'll go over the slide, even though it really doesn't have anything to do with the bank account. The campaign may not accept cash contributions of 100 or more. So 100 or more have to be itemized. That's we call that well, itemization. It's a name, address, occupation, and employer, and anonymous contributions of 100 or more are prohibited. And in the event that you do get $100 cash contribution, it is deposited with your, it goes into your local agency's general fund. And similarly, contributions of 100 more made by money order cash checks are prohibited. They have to be on a written instrument. Out-of-pocket expenses, candidates may not make out-of-pocket expenses. You must make, that's what I was just saying, put a loan into your, put a loan into your campaign bank account and try paying from the get-go out of the campaign account. And the candidate may only pay filing fees, ballot statement fees, and $50 annual the Secretary of State fee out of pocket. So there's always an exception. And then campaign workers, volunteers, and even the spouse can make out-of-pocket expenses and be reimbursed. So that is okay. So when we're out there getting the contributions, you're doing your pass the hat, your little fundraisers, have somebody record at $25 or more, have somebody record the name and address, because in the event you're having more pass the hats and you're getting more money, then that way you have a way to contact those people in the event that they get up to $100 or more and you need that information for the itemization. And keep a record. For example, you have to keep some sort of record. So keep the original source documentation such as bank statements and other records reflecting account activity, copies of completed campaign statements, and it's for a period of 4 years from the date that the statement was filed. So there are candidate and treasurer responsibilities. You must have a treasurer. The both candidate and treasurer must both take appropriate steps to ensure that there is compliance. So check with the other, make sure the treasurer, your treasurer, is checking with you, and you as the candidate are checking with the treasurer. Stay informed, be aware of the bank deposits and proper expenditures of campaign funds. And in the event of an audit or investigation, both the candidate and treasurer are equally liable for non-disclosure on campaign records reports or lack of records. And I also, I've been doing this a long time. And I don't want to scare anybody when I talk about enforcement or audits and investigations, but we are a disclosure act, and you don't get in trouble when you do something wrong. As long as it's not egregious, you get in trouble when you don't disclose. So when it comes to filing, like your 460, put it somewhere, because they're never going to go after you if you can't figure out what schedule to put something on. And Tom, with the good thing, and I am going to pitch electronic filing right at this second. The thing with electronic filing, it prompts you. So like if it needs itemization, it helps you. So there is a pitch for electronic filing. So what's next for your committee? There's AB 571 and contribution limits. So as of January 21, we didn't if you didn't have a local contribution limit, you weren't subject to the state. Now, if the local city or county does not have a contribution limit ordinance, then you are subject to AB 571. So if you are a new candidate, newer, or thinking about renting, check with your local office, city or county, to make sure that if they have a local ordinance and whether or not you are subject to, it's called AB 571. So there's committee fundraising, advertising disclosures, and campaign reports. I'm powering through this. I know. Here's my AB 571. Like I said, it's January 2021. Check with your local ordinance to make sure your local city or county to see if they have a contribution limit ordinance. If they aren't, if they don't, then you are subject to the state. However, this is only for 87-200 filers as of now. So, and does not apply, which would be the city planner, city, county commissioners, and city council people. This does not apply to any special districts, school districts, only city and county candidates. The FBVC is not responsible for enforcing any local contribution limits if the local has one. You can receive contributions by credit card, wire transfer, debit account transaction, text message, PayPal. We allow all those electronic. We allow all those sort of PayPal, Venmo, Zelle. You just have to be able to obtain the information if they need it. So however you need to set it up, if you need to obtain the address, occupation, and employer along with the name, you just have to be able to set it up that you'd be able to get a hold of them. There are political advertising disclaimers. We have a chart for candidates on our website, so you would just pull the appropriate chart, and basically, and it has on the left, it's what type of communication, and on the right, it'll say what has to be put with that advertisement. There are filing schedules. You can get those from your local your local city or county clerk, or we have I put a sample of the November 5th up here, and it has on the left the deadline, the period covered, what form to file, and then there's like notes for each one. And just for those of you on the November ballot, the 90 days starts, as you'll see here, on August 7th and runs through 11/5, and that's the 497, receiving $1,000 single source within that time period that you file the 24-hour report. And then when you're ever on the ballot, there are always pre-elections, a candidate or a measure. So our first pre-election, is September 26th, and our second pre-election is October 24th. Okay. Getting there. How am I doing on time? Okay, so I'm pitching some future upcoming trainings, right? Well, we missed the one today, but on July 12th, we're going to do a candidate treasure online, and it's our whole webinar for candidate treasure training, from the getting started to the the filling out the Form 460 schedules to after the election. There's one on July 25th. And as of today, we're adding just a 460, filling out the Form 460. It's going to be on July 11th, but just here, I think I took snip. Must be last. On our website, we also have campaign rules. We have all the resources. We have the candidate toolkit. We have the candidate treasurer fact sheet. The advertising disclaimers, your manual too that you'll want to pull, and you can do the individual chapters. And there's the candidate toolkit. You get our forms if your local agency doesn't have electronic filing. And that's it. I can turn it on back for questions, or turn it back to Tom, or head on to Olga.
So question about the 460 and the 497, when to use each, when to file each.
So that you go by the filing schedule. So what happens when you run, if you're running, like, so this is a snip of an example of the November 5th. And it has on the right-hand side, the deadline, and then the period covered, and then the form number. So like the pre-elections, it tells you what time. The first pre-election is due 7/26, covers 7/1 through 9/21. And then it has what form. Yeah. And then there's a 470. If you file a 470, if you didn't file the 470 prior to, it's actually due at the first pre-election. So that's why on the first pre-election, it's the 460 or 470. Yeah, and our 24-hour period for the 497 is 8/7 through 11/5. That's 90 days and the day of the election.
Thank you.
All right, so my name is Olga Hernandez. I'm an election services specialist here with the candidate services team. And I'm just going to go over briefly about what happens when we receive your forms here in the office. So one of the first things that we're going to ask when you come in to pull your papers is, do you plan on raising or spending over $2,000? Depending on what you answer is what will determine what documents we're going to issue to you. So everyone will receive in their packet, well, let me go back. If you say you're going to spend less than $2,000, your packet will include a Form 501, the candidate intention statement, a filing schedule that Alex was just going over, and also a Form 470. The Form 470 covers the entire calendar year. When you fill that out, your filing for that year is done. Nothing else needs to be completed. The 470 is done in a paper form. You don't need to file. You don't need to e-file it. If you do plan on raising or going over the $2,000 mark, then it's a little bit different. We'll issue you the Form 501, candidate intention statement, a filing schedule, and then we'll give you a Form 410, and then we'll also give you instructions about e-filing. So the Form 410 is the one that you're going to use to open up your committee. That one gets filed with the state, just as Alex said. And then once we receive a completed copy of the Form 410, we're going to input it into our net file system. And then the system will generate a welcome letter. The welcome letter will get sent to the email address that you provide on the 410, and then that will have your login credentials so you can set up your account with NetFile so that when the time comes, you can then start filing your Form 460. We do send out reminder notices to everyone that has a committee, and those usually go out about 3 to 4 weeks before. When it's for a pre-election, it's usually a week or so before the deadline. And then just quickly, if you are filing with this, or if you're filing to run for a city office, then your filing official will be with the city clerk. If you're running for a school or a special district, your filing obligation will be with our office, with the elections office. Their filing obligation will be with the Secretary of State, and then for federal, anyone running for a federal office, they would file with the Federal Elections Commission. So we try and help you as much as we can when it comes to FPPC documents. We give very basic information, but if you have any questions as far as how to report a contribution you received or any technical questions, we always refer you to contact FPPC. So I think that's pretty much it. Anyone have any questions?
Excellent. Hold on. Hold on. Phil Donahue, it's long enough? I think.
Okay.
No.
So I know you just mentioned about if you're running for a city office, then you file with the clerk versus filing online. And is that the form 460 that you were speaking of, or is that a different form?
So you would file your 460s would go with the city. So you have to check with the city to see if they do e-filing. They may or may not. It might just be paper form, but you'd have to check with them. Okay. Yeah. So it's best to start with the city and then it's routed to the online portion and then you follow that. Right. So if they do online, then they would give you the credentials for that. Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, just clarifying. So the 410, that goes to the Secretary of State. Can you file that electronically? Or does that have to be either mailed or hand delivered?
Hold on.
Technically, the Secretary of State can receive a DocuSign version of a 410 now. What I would recommend, go to the Secretary of State's website. When you get to their website and their search, just type in 410 and you'll hit a page that will show you the requirements. Fundamentally, it's always used to been paper for local, but they changed that earlier in the year that allows you a DocuSign version to turn into that. But the filing can't be electronically filed from our system to theirs. They don't allow that. Okay.
I'm telling you, we learned things at every one of these workshops. I did not know about the DocuSign Secretary of State opportunity. Another question?
Okay, you just made me think of another question. So you said that, so whether I walk it in, mail it in, electronically send that to the Secretary of State, either way it goes, what's the timeline for them to get that to NetFile and for that to be up and available and ready to go?
We're going to go behind Olga this time.
Typically, it can take them anywhere from a couple of days to a week or so, depending on how much comes in. When you get into election season, sometimes it takes longer than you would like. What I would recommend, if you can create a filing on a 460 without a committee ID, what you would simply put in place of the ID is the word pending. Okay, and you can legally electronically file it if you're filing to the county, a county office, school district, special district. And once you get the committee ID from the Secretary of State, you can amend that filing if you like, or on your next filing, just make sure you put in your committee ID.
Alex, did you have any follow-up on how Tom just answered that question?
Well, no, that's exactly what I was going to say. That's what I was saying, although I was talking so fast. When you submit it does depend on how many that they get. Sometimes they're 3-4 days out. Sometimes they get up to 5-7, but don't wait for the letter. Go on to Cal Access to see if your number has been issued.
Yeah, you can go to the Secretary of State's website and search and see if that has come through.
Or call us and we'll help you find the Cal Access site.
Okay.
Because the search site alone is a little bit tricky if you put too much information in.
Less is more.
Right.
Okay. Well, seeing no other questions, we're going to go ahead and close this panel. So please join me in thanking Olga, Tom, and Alex. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take a quick 5-minute break. So I'm excited about this next panel, which is about getting your message out. So we're thrilled to have Cheryl Collier represent the League of Women Voters here in West County, a really important partner with our office. You know, the League is a nonpartisan nonprofit. It's really important that our office partners with nonpartisan groups. We also work with the political parties, all of them. And we really think that the League is doing important work around communicating to voters and supporting our democracy. So what we're going to do on this panel is hear first from Cheryl, and then we're going to hear from a campaign expert on social media strategies for candidates. So, and again, it's going to be a lot of information, but hopefully it's helpful. And so, and it's great because one of the things Cheryl's going to be talking about is something that only costs to you is your time. And it's the 411, the Vote 411 opportunity through League of Women Voters. So take it away, Cheryl.
All righty. Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to give you a little brief history about the League of Women Voters. There are a few people that are on this earth that have no knowledge about this organization. So the League of Women Voters was a grassroots organization that started in 1920. And the main purpose and focus was to get the vote for women. And as we can see today, they achieved their goals, but it was not an easy challenge. They went to jail, they refused to eat, so they were force-fed. Different things went on. It was very serious. And as any organization, as it grows, then there was a division among the two leaders and what have you. But anyway, the bottom line is they achieved their goals. And with the 19th Amendment, women, excluding the South, gained their right to vote. So with that said and done, now the organization is structured in a manner that we have local leagues all over the United States. So it starts with local leagues, then we have a Bay League in this area, then we have our state league, and then we have our national league that has a president and a CEO. Our CEO is probably the person or the face that you would see speaking to Congress. I have seen her with jeans on, and she has actually gone to jail protesting for certain measures and rights and what have you. So it's not a job I aspire to have. So with that said, that kind of gives you an overview of how we've grown over the last 100+ years. And we are nonpartisan. And West County is unique in the sense that most of the folks I meet, I concur with their beliefs to a great degree. So, but anyway, with all that said and done, we're as neutral as a human being can possibly be in all cases. So, the state, so most of the work that is done is voluntary. And to get back to, before I go to the Vote 401, it was once called Voter's Edge. And several organizations came together to develop that. I'd like to give everybody credit, so I believe Diablo Valley League spearheads and pretty much controls it, which is the other part of Contra Costa County. But they have volunteers throughout the counties that work together. I had a sense of pride because one of my members ended up participating and then became the chair over what is now called Voter 411. But with all that said and done, it is a wonderful program. It's easy, to go online to use it. You just type in vote411.org. I love ORG because it means that it's a very secure site and what have you. And you just plug in your address, zip code, and there might be another question or two. And that can give you, once it's loaded up, all the information from the lower part of the ballot all the way up of issues that pertain personally to you because of your address that you plug in. I don't know what else to share with you. It's just really, really that simple and basic, straightforward.
Yeah, no, that's great. If I could just add, Cheryl, right, from the league's perspective, the most important thing that these folks can do as candidates is to pay attention if they hear from you about how to do all the 411 stuff, right? Yes. Yeah.
So, all right. So another thing that happens is they do, the individuals that work on this Vote 411, they rely on you to feed or give them the information so it's there and available for the voters to be able to review it. But if they don't receive it, part of their job is to do the research, and they have to do the work and put it on there. And they may, in fact, put data on there that you don't want to share. So candidates really should take the time to submit so you have exactly what you want the public to see and hear. So let me back up a minute and tell you about the league. The league itself, local leagues, we are somewhat governed by the state league, but because of where we're located, we have measures that pertain to just us. So as a local league, we focus on the community as a whole, and we try to educate voters by bringing the voter and the candidate together. So one can sit there and ask questions, get to see if in fact the candidate aligns with your beliefs, your needs, what you want for your family and community. And that way, once you're able to do and see that, you may cast your vote for them and even give them money. So it's a very important process. We call them forums. We're getting ready to organize some now because we have ballot measures right here in the city of Richmond that we're going to bring together so people can hear the pros and cons. So our job is always to supply the pros and cons of any measure or issue that exists. So, thank you.
Excellent. And I know, so I had a great experience working with Voters Edge, the precursor to Vote 411, and strongly encourage you, share your pictures. Be willing to put the time and energy into what's important to you and talk about your campaign. And it's a great way to reach people. So what we're going to do now, building on what Cheryl just talked about with League of Women Voters, is we're going to hear from Cameron McNabb of BMWL, and her bio is in your books, to go over some basics about social media and being a candidate. And so I'm going to let you take it away. Cameron, thank you so much for being here. And yes, you are in a room with potential candidates, and I know you can't see them, and but there's 2 rows of them, and there's a Contra Costa television camera in the back. And so we are thrilled to be recording this and really appreciate you taking the time. Take it away.
Awesome. Can you guys see my screen? Are we good there?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, absolutely great. So hi everyone, my name is Cameron. I am a political consultant here in the Bay Area, and we do a lot of candidate and ballot measure campaigns. And I'm here to talk to you all about social media and the political landscape. Today, we are going to be covering the importance of having a good campaign website, a good email program, and then organic social media. And I'm going to be going through this fast. There's a lot of information, but everyone will have access to this slide deck. So no need to rush and take notes. So what is social media and why you should have it? Social media is a group of online platforms that enables users to create, share, and interact with content. These platforms facilitate the exchange of information and ideas. Social media can include Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google, TikTok, and today I'm also going to be grouping that in with websites and emails. Every campaign must have a website, a Facebook page, an Instagram, and some sort of email list. You should see social media, You should see social media as another point of contact with voters to complement your paid advertising if you're running paid ads in your field campaign. It's also another tool in your toolbox for getting the votes you need to win. And social media should coordinate and complement your overall campaign plan. So you should have the same overall messages with similar audiences that you're targeting. Alrighty, campaign websites. So why do I need a campaign website? Number one, visibility and accessibility. Websites provide a central hub where voters can easily access information about the candidate, their policies, volunteer opportunities and events. A website can facilitate direct communication with voters through email blasts and contact forms. So it's a great way to engage with your audience or, your voters. Probably the most important for fundraising. Campaign websites are crucial for online fundraising. And volunteer recruitment. It's a great tool to recruit volunteers by providing sign-up forms and information on how supporters can get involved in your campaign. And then finally, credibility. A well-designed website shows that the candidate is serious, organized, and capable of running a modern campaign. So here's some best practices when you're thinking about building a website. Number one, and probably the most important, you want to optimize for what you want your audience to do. So when someone visits your website, do you want them to sign up for your email list so you can communicate with them regularly? Do you want them to donate to your campaign or volunteer? So when someone's visiting your website, that should be the first ask that that they see. You want to have clear and concise messaging. It's one of the only impressions you will make on some voters, so keep it clean and simple. Do not write a book. A lot of people, majority of people are not going to be reading your whole campaign website, so keep it short. Bullet points are totally fine. You want to integrate with your other social media, so make sure you always have your Facebook or Instagram linked somewhere on your website so people can visit. Mobile optimization. This is really important. You want to ensure your website looks good on all devices, especially your phone. Most of us spend all of our time on our phones anyway. There's been many times where I've seen a beautiful website on my laptop, but when I go and look at it on my phone, it looks weird. So always make sure you're optimizing for mobile and smartphones. Some basic information to include. You want to have a home page that typically looks like a big hero image of you. You want to have an about page, an issues page, any of your endorsements. You want to obviously have a donation button, a volunteer page, and a disclaimer and privacy policy if you are collecting emails and phone numbers. You want to make your website accessible. So think about your constituents. Do you have a large Spanish-speaking constituency? You want to ensure that everyone can access your website. There are some really good and affordable tools that will help you translate your website. You want to have clear branding, so follow your branding guidelines. You want to use the same logo, colors, fonts throughout your whole website. And then include movement and photos to break up texts. Here's some examples of some good campaign websites. I will let you visit them on your own time in the interest of time, but some popular platforms that we use to build websites are Nation Builder, WordPress, Squarespace, and GoDaddy. Emails. So why email? Email provides a direct line of communication between political campaigns and voters, ensuring messages are delivered straight to your voters' inboxes. It's cost effective compared to traditional methods like direct mail or TV ads. It's a powerful tool for fundraising. You can mobilize volunteers, and probably the most important is you're building relationships. Regular personalized communication helps build and maintain relationships with voters, and this helps foster loyalty and trust. So a good email program communicates regularly to keep voters engaged. A couple times a month is fine. If you learn anything from this presentation, is to always have one call to action in your email. If there's no call to action, the only thing the reader can do is unsubscribe. So really focus your attention on what you're trying to achieve in your email. If you want donations, make the call to action a donate button. You want to make the reader the hero when you're writing emails. Think about how does this endorsement matter to them? How will they benefit? If they donate, how will they benefit? So you want to center the reader and use really inclusive language like we, us, you together. Your goal is to create a community and movement. A good email program is short and uses bolding. People spend on average 13 seconds reading an email, which I think is honestly long, but so you want to make it short with lots of paragraph spacing and bolding. A good email program is creative. Don't be afraid to be creative, share personal photos, videos, GIFs. You want the reader to be engaged, not bored. You want to have a good subject line. You always want to hook the reader in to opening the email, so make sure your subject line is creative and action-oriented. Test an email before sending it out. There's no unsend button, so always have someone else proofread. And then only send an email when you have something to say. You want to respect your email's time and attention, so you shouldn't be emailing your list every day asking them for money. Setting up your email channels, you want to use a tool that integrates easily with your website for collecting email signups. We like MailChimp and Nation Builder and Constant Contact. You want to create an email template that matches the look and feel of your campaign. It's usually just your logo up at the top, but consistent branding is really important in a campaign. You always want to disclaimer your emails. It's the same as your campaign website. Don't forget that. It's boring, but it's essential. You want to code your contacts as you're building your list so you can target communication. So if someone signs up on your website that they want to volunteer, I would tag them as a volunteer and email them when there's opportunities to, door knock or phone bank. Opting in. You cannot email people who have not agreed to hear from you first. You will be put in email jail, and I've learned that the hard way, and it's really hard to get out. So when you're thinking about building your email list, always make sure that people are opting in before you are talking to them. And then you want to email list build throughout your whole campaign. So you can do that through paid ads. You can promote it on organic social media. You can promote your website, and at in-person events, always have a sign-up sheet where people, put their phone and email down. And just as important as building your email list, you also want to have list maintenance. So removing contacts who are no longer engaged is just as important than building. So here's an example of a good email. It had a good hook. We created a sense of urgency. Actually, this was last year during the June 30th fundraising deadline. So I'm sure everyone's been getting lots of donation emails. I know I've been sending them. You want to have inclusive language, right? It's bolded, it's short, it's visually appealing, and it has one call to action. And this email alone raised $33,000. So you can do a lot with your email if you have a good program and use the right components. This is an email that needs some work, in my opinion. It's really long and has too many calls to action. There's different colored bolding, which is a little visually distracting. I really don't know where my eyes should go here, and it does not center the reader. So measuring your email success, these are just a couple ways to check if your email program is doing good or needs some work. If you have high open rates, that's an indicator that your subject lines are really good and they're effective to get people to open the email. If you have high click-through rates, this is a measure of engagement and interest. So if people open your email and are clicking on certain links, that's a high click-through rate. A conversion rate is success in achieving your campaign goals. So if your goal for the email is to get money and raise money for this fundraising deadline, and you send this email out and you get, $10,000, that's a really good conversion rate. Unsubscribe rate, this is an indicator of content relevance and frequency. So are a lot of people unsubscribing from your emails? Like, what should you change? Are you emailing too much, too little? Is this content relevant to my audience? And then bounce rates, are my emails even delivering? Do I have a healthy list? Here are some ideas for emails. Like I said earlier, you should not just be emailing your list, asking them for money. There's hundreds, thousands of different email ideas you can be sending. You can email about holidays or invite people to, a house party. Did you get a great endorsement? You can share videos. There are a lot of different ways you can be emailing people. Social media. So organic social media is a cost-effective way to reach potential voters, a great way to gain followers, and a natural way to build community around a campaign. And when I say organic social media, I mean me going on my phone right now and posting a photo to Instagram without any money behind it. That's organic. Social or paid socials when you have money behind, a photo, and there's a whole bunch of different rules to that, and it's more complicated. But social media is free. You have the potential to reach a big audience. It often comes across as more genuine compared to paid ads. So, feel free to share behind the scenes moments and personal stories. These unpolished updates can really humanize you and make you seem more relatable to voters. And then engagement and interaction. Social media allows for real-time interaction with constituents where you can, like comments, answer questions, that kind of thing. And again, it helps build trust and a sense of community around your campaign. So a good organic social media program creates purposeful and consistent content. You want to be realistic with yourself. You don't want to create a whole bunch of channels that you can't update and monitor regularly. You have clear and recognizable branding. Always have some sort of brand element in every post you have, whether that be, a little logo in the corner. You understand your audience. So who are your voters and what channels do they use? Do they like your content? Do they not like your content? You want to have a strategy and a content calendar. Always plan ahead. It might seem like a lot of work at first, but it saves you a lot of time in the future. It's engaging. Like I said, social media is a two-way platform, so you need volunteers or staff or yourself dedicated to managing these platforms and engaging with voters. You want to optimize for different platforms. You shouldn't post the same thing across every platform. So Facebook, you can be a little more of a storyteller. I would say Instagram is more casual, and then obviously something like Twitter is short and sweet. A good organic social media program sets measurable goals. So do you want to increase followers or engagement? Always have goals when you're running a social media program. You have a diversity of content. So you can post your own stories. You can have, Q&As, FAQs, graphics, videos. Your organic social media program complements your paid media, your email, and your field program. So you don't want to think of any of these buckets separately. All of them are connected and they should be connected. So if you're walking, say this weekend, post a story or Instagram post on Thursday asking people to come. And then after the event, talk about it, do a recap. Is fun, creative, and aspirational. Don't be afraid to share about yourself or the campaign and post reels. Reels under 1 minute do really well on Instagram. I would even say keep it shorter to 15 to 30 seconds. And then you have rules of engagement. So what happens if you have a troll? How do you respond? How are you responding to positive comments, negative comments? Here are some examples. So here are some examples of some Facebook cover photos that have clear branding and hero shots that are high quality. Here are some examples of some really good Instagram feeds that have a diversity of content. They're all well branded. I know what I'm looking at when I see these. Here are some reels. I won't show these, but they're short and sweet and they show community, which is really important. Always remember, if you're out at events, take photos, take videos, share them on social media. So here are some social media musts and key takeaways. Don't write a book for your website, have photos and make it easy to use. You want to keep your emails short and have one call to action. Branding and messaging should be consistent across all channels. Make clear roles and responsibilities. So who's posting, who's proofreading emails, who's updating your website when you get a new endorsement. You always want to be on top of that. And then finally, create a community with your social media. Make it fun and inclusive. Here are some really good resources for you all. Again, you will have this slide deck to look back on, but these are good resources that we all use either for inspiration, or like building certain websites or emails. These are all really great tools that we use every day. Thank you so much.
Well, hold on a second, Cheryl. Does anybody have a question for Cameron or for Cheryl before we say goodbye to them? Oh, yeah. Hold on. Oh, the question is how we get the slide deck. Well, we have your email because you registered, and so we'll make sure you get it. Oh, yeah.
Cheryl, I'm sure you said this already. How do you submit the I don't know the name of it.
The vote 411?
The vote for one, but it was something that was going out, and you talked about. Yes, maybe it's the forums, but it's whatever it was you wanted that the candidate can send to the League of Women Voters.
Yeah. Yeah, the vote 411.
Yes. Okay. So they also would go through vote411.org, and then there's an area that they can fill out the information that's needed for them. It's really basic and very straightforward. Okay, so yes.
And also, this is how it's helpful that you provide your contact information as a candidate. And so, because the League of Women Voters will work with us to make sure that they have the candidate information. And so, so check your emails. Make sure you are giving out emails that you actually check as a candidate. That's also important. You know, Olga was talking about the email reminders that she'll send around, you know, filing the FPPC forms in a timely fashion. If you're not checking that email, that perhaps is your compliance email, you're not going to get those emails. So, okay. Well, thanks again, Cameron and Cheryl. We really appreciate it. And without further ado, I'm not going to trip you. Yeah, one more round of applause. You're good. I want to bring up, their bios are in your packets, but I want to bring up the Vice Mayor of Pleasant Hill, Sue Nowak, and the hometown guy. Yes, that's right. We have council member Paul Fedeli. I just thought I'd get your attention, guys. Come on. It's the last panel. So come on in. And it can seem like a lot. The forms, the compliance, the fundraising, the social media, all the things. Oh yeah, and PS, people might come up to you in the grocery store and have opinions, right? I mean, you're making yourself public in a new way as a candidate, okay? And so I'm going to be both. I'm mostly going to be moderating, but I'll add my 2 cents because I have run at 2 different scales, right? And so I didn't form a committee or have to hire anybody or do an organized thing. When I ran unopposed for school board, that was a whole set of easy, but running countywide was very, very different. So I'm grateful that you're taking time, and hopefully the sun won't be too bad in this room at this moment. But just wanted to have you guys share sort of your opening thoughts about knowing that you're here to try to inspire the next group of people to run, in terms of thinking about why you decided to run, and maybe one of the things that you were glad that you knew, like kind of the best, most important advice. And then we'll dive into some other things. But why'd you run? We'll start with you, hometown guy.
Well, welcome to El Cerrito. To the east and central county folks, a little touch of nice, cool wind is kind of a nice thing here. Yeah, thank you. And it's a big ticket item, isn't it? There's running and there's serving, and they're a little different, but they both take a lot of the similar techniques and attitudes and energy. And sometimes it's the last place and the last thing I want to be doing. And sometimes it's the most exciting, wonderful thing in the world to be an elected official. So really think about it. I know I heard some of the questions that were asked here. For me, it's a long story. Actually, when I was 10 years old here at Mara Vista Grammar School in El Cerrito, I got hooked and really, I was going to say in love, but John F. Kennedy and his call for public service as a 10-year-old, I listened and I got on student council. And in college, I majored in political science and journalism, and I worked for a decade on the Hill in Congress. I worked for longer than a decade in the state capitol for legislators, and I thought, I could do that. You know, what would I do? How would I vote? And 8 years ago, when I was the director of government affairs at BART and retired, people started coming to me because you made enough friends and enough people that have seen your work that said, why don't you run? And I always had an excuse. It was either parents that were dying or kids that were growing up. I didn't have an excuse anymore. So I was an older guy running and had a lot of support, but had to do all these things that you're hearing about here and get them done and then go out and talk. And once you get elected, that's where the action really starts and how you feel that you've contributed. So it's a long journey. I'm very glad I did it. It can be tiring, but it can be so rewarding as well. Sue?
Oh, so I'm the total opposite, actually. I actually grew up in Connecticut, and my father was an elected judge, and I had to help him campaign, and I swore I'd never, ever do that again, because that was miserable, standing out in front of the grocery store handing out flyers to people walking in. But anyway, so I went into a finance career, and I was in the finance world for about 26 years. And my husband and I had agreed sort of that when my son turned 5, I'd figure out a way to kick back and not have the big corporate job I had. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. And then I realized I really am miserable at being a homemaker, housewife, whatever, all those things. So, and I missed the challenge of the mental challenge. And so I ran a couple of PTAs. That's not exactly where you get mental challenge. And then I went on to start an education foundation, got onto Rotary, bond oversight committees. And finally somebody said, you ought to run for Pleasant Hill City Council. And that was back in 2014. And so I didn't have the background a lot of people had in planning commission or, Paul's brilliant background. So I did hire a consultant. And I remember him sitting in the back of the room most of the time when I was debating or talking or something. And his focus was making sure I didn't roll my eyes, didn't raise my eyebrow, because I was used to doing that in the corporate world. I did a lot of bankruptcy work. So, if people had said something stupid, I was going to let them know. And you can't really do that when you're running for office. So he just sat in the back and kept his eye on me and just stared me down to make sure I behaved myself. But it was a fortunate time in Pleasant Hill to run. And I think it does make a difference. Pleasant Hill at that time had a city council that was a little divided. And so I felt I could step in and maybe help with that and bring some financial knowledge, which all city councils would be helpful to have. And so I ran. It was a very tight race. First place was by 99 votes over me, and then I beat the third place guy by 113 votes. And so it was, and we didn't know until the Wednesday before Thanksgiving what the final vote was. So that was a tough, nerve-wracking experience. But as Paul said, once you're in, I've been on city council now 10 years, twice mayor, twice vice mayor. Then the fun really begins, and the work as well. Paul and I sit on several things together, and one of the great parts about, and I said this to Paul just the other day, one of the great parts about being on council is getting to know your fellow council members all around the county and what's going on around the county. And that's been one of the really fun experiences of being on council. But it is work.
Well, I love how you had different journeys. I'm going to try not to tangle you up too much, Paul. Should I go behind you next time? Yeah, anyway, okay. So, and I know as a former school board member, when people ask me about running, I talk about that being a parent of a children in school made me a better school board member. That certainly informed my decision making. But being a school board member sure did actually help me be a more active parent of school-age children in the sense that I knew everything that was going on. And so so there are benefits to running and winning and being able to do that. What I would love for you to talk about is maybe take a moment to brag a little bit about something you did well on the campaign trail. I know, so you talked about like your consultant was like, don't look askance, don't roll your eyes, that kind of thing. But for example, like I know someone who, when they were running for city council, made a point of writing handwritten notes to as many people in her jurisdiction as she could. And, incredibly time consuming. But, she targeted elderly voters who were really reliable voters, and they loved the handwritten note. So take a moment to think about a really good piece of advice on campaigns. Because I'll sum up one of the city clerks that spoke on Saturday, Joanne Robbins from Lafayette, at our first workshop. She said, if the voters don't know you, they're not going to vote for you. So you got to think about how to help your voters get to know you. So we'll start with Sue this time. Brag on something awesome you did on the campaign trail, Madam Vice Mayor.
Okay. Well, I decided a little earlier than a lot of people that I was going to run for city council. I decided in May and made an announcement about it in May. And so that was a really good start. And once I announced, I started walking, and I walked most of Pleasant Hill. Now, I have to say, sometimes it feels like a total waste of time because you go up to a lot of doors. I did not knock on any doors that had no soliciting on the doors. I would drop something on the doorstep, but I would not knock. But on everybody else's door, I knocked and spoke to people. On a whole, that was a great experience, but it takes up a lot of time. And I had I remember knocking on one guy's door, and he answered, and he said, well, let me see how smart you are. And I thought, oh God, what is he going to ask me? And he said, can you tell me what the capital of Alaska is? So I said, yeah, Juneau. And I said, do you want to try another one? Because I can probably do all 50. And he's like, no, that was enough. And I'm like, okay, good. I had one person said, you can put a lawn sign in my yard if you get me a note back on what they're doing downtown to this clock on top of some building. And okay, so, and many of these people are really good friends of mine still to this day, and I'd never met them before. So, I'd say that was a really good experience. The other thing for me, which was interesting, in Pleasant Hill, we always joke around about the Pleasant Hill 100. There's sort of it's not even 100, it's maybe like 30. If you need things done in Pleasant Hill, there are like 30 people you go to get it done, right? And so I was not part of that Pleasant Hill 30. And so people said, you don't know that many people, and I thought, well, they have no idea because I was on the education side, PTAs and Education Foundation. So they came to my opening fundraiser and they're like, who are all these people? And I'm like, these are my people. And so, it's surprising to people. You may not know that, that little group, that little cliquey group that theoretically controls the politics in your town. But if you know everybody else, it doesn't really matter. And getting lawn signs into people's yards that know you was, I think, one of the best things I did because I knew so many people. I had lawn signs in so many people's yard. And they're like, well, I voted for you because, my neighbor had your lawn sign in their yard. And if they liked you, I figured you were okay. And so I'd say those were, two really big things. And then really it is, people will come up to you in the grocery store or anywhere and ask you or talk to you and things like that. And you have to be really open to that. Smile, talk to them. My husband does not go to the grocery store with me anymore. He takes a separate car when we go out to dinner because I will be stuck for another half an hour at the restaurant. So he takes a separate car. But that's, people love the fact that you're approachable and willing to stop and talk to them. And that's probably one of the other key points I would say about, be nice.
All right, best advice. Brag a little bit.
A few quick things. I was not that well known actually, other than in transportation circles, but I got to hook up with two other people, and we were a trilogy. Ran on a ticket together with Rochelle Pardue Okimoto and Mayor Greg Lyman. So anywhere our brochure went, I was there along with them. So people knew them. I was there with them, and we could mix and match going to various events together. One thing that everybody knows, but it was my great tip, and I'm a pretty good communicator. It was my major, journalism and communication. The phone that we have, do everything immediately. Schedule things immediately. If someone asks you something, respond immediately so it's done and you can move forward. Don't put things off. because that's what you're saying. If you've responded, this person's responsible. He got back to me right away. How great. Do it right away. Then that, at the end of the day, you've done all your things. And the science is a good thing. I was Mr. Sign Man. I ordered big signs, rainproof. It had a motto on the top, good for El Cerrito. And people, yes, I'm good for El Cerrito. But my view was, if they voted for me, good for El Cerrito. They voted for me, But that was my exercise too. I would every other day take new signs out. And some cities are not conducive to signs. We're small enough that it's concentrated. Your sign is out there, your logo is out there, and that was good. The last thing I just want to say is I wrote a couple op-eds that got published. I can't even remember what they are now, but I was able to. It looks professional. I'm someone who got a viewpoint out in the world, and I would attach that to emails as a campaign thing that people saw was maybe smart. So those are little things that I did, but it really, it's a lot of work, right, Sue? Yes. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. You know that commercial on TV about brain from jellyfish? I think being active in a campaign, it keeps you active. All the tasks you have to do, all the ideas and issues you have to think about is better than crossword puzzles. It really is.
Yeah, see, all kinds of benefits. I know people who've lost weight when they're running for office and walking and knocking and all that kind of stuff. You can also go the other way if you engage in emotional eating as a candidate. I want to take a moment to just open it up to questions for you. I mean, I could pepper them with things all day or share vignettes myself, but yes, exactly. All right.
Thank you. I have two questions first quickly. Two questions first quickly. Published in local journal, what was it?
It was West County Times.
Okay. East Bay Times kind of thing. Okay, great. Sue, you mentioned fundraising. How much money are people, and you've probably gone through several cycles, how much money are people raising and spending on city council races?
Wait for the microphone. How much money are people raising and spending?
It varies. So in my first campaign, because I hired a consultant and had no signs from a previous race, I raised about $20,000 for Pleasant Hill. So Pleasant Hill is about 34,000 people. And I think I had lots of lawn signs. I had one mailer, and then I had all the cards I dropped off at people's front doors, and then the cost of my consultant. Now, the second time, I'm in my third term, so I've done this twice. So the second time, I only had to raise $10,000 because I had to get some more signs, because you don't get them all back every time. New, mailer and new drop. Plus, you have more information as to what you've done or what you haven't done, things like that. And then the third time, this last go round, I think I only raised $5,000, and that was more than enough because I had still plenty of signs, and at that point, you're pretty well known by the third time as well in the city the size of Pleasant Hill. So.
Did you raise money?
Yeah, each race was different. The first, and it's horrible, isn't it, raising money? It's not fun. I don't like that at all, and you have to be out there with your hand out. And I was a little broader the first time, but the second time I just wanted friends and family. And 22,000 was kind of what I had here, and had to chip in some of my own money too for some stuff and for a lot of signs. But also, what's interesting is, if you are going for re-election on the second time, I decided to really just do friends and family and not do police and fire in my city, because our city was going through a financial crisis, and I knew I would have to do some tough votes, maybe some cutbacks, and I didn't want to be owed to anybody. And those were things that I knew they might come a calling on. So I didn't do that then. So
I did not do that either. I the first go round, but the second and third go round, I did not. And I didn't take any money from developers, because a lot of the decisions you make as a council member are land use decisions. And that gets you in a little sticky position if you've taken money from developers. So I did not take any money from them either. So.
And also, there was a law that was passed in 2022, actually, that you need to be aware of in terms of the amount of money you can raise from developers if they are before your jurisdiction. So you have to be just mindful of that. And so all of a sudden, people who thought they were going to raise $10, $20, $30,000 from developers, it was like, oh, here's $150. So anyway, it just depends on not anybody that has a decision. That's true. It's not just the development. Thanks, Sue. Other questions from our aspiring office holders for things? Yeah.
The teacher in me just can't help it. What's something that you would have done differently your first time around?
I'll take that first. No.
I'm not sure there's a whole lot I would have done differently the first time around. You do feel by the end, having walked a lot and knocked on a lot of doors, that the percentage of time spending on knocking on doors, people will just take your flyer and shut the door and not really speak to you. They don't really want to speak to you. Or the amount of homes you'd see no soliciting signs. You do feel like, wow, is that a good use of my time or not? One thing I probably would have done more of was had house parties where somebody you know well has a neighborhood gathering of their friends and you get to meet them in that kind of gathering. I probably would have done more of those and less of just knocking cold on everybody's door. That is something I would have done differently.
It does get easier with re-election if you're, the first time out's tough. And this may sound like it doesn't make sense, but I was off running a campaign and for this city, and I would have probably maybe made a little more contact with the people, the actual government folks that I was running to be in, because when I got elected, there was some miscommunications or non-communications, and so you come in new. There was no orientation for me. I don't know if I'm telling stories here, but there was a lot to learn at the city, and you don't want to. It's two different entities, the city and the campaign, but you want to let them know if I get elected, I want to be ready. I want to come in and have an easier transition coming in. But that's water under the bridge.
Well, actually, and I would build on that for anyone. And we've talked about this at the other workshops. It's really important that you are aware of what your particular jurisdiction is going through. And I strongly recommend that you meet with the top staff person of your jurisdiction, whether that's a city manager or a superintendent, and so that you can have those conversations and ask questions about how things are going. If you're running for city council, you need to make sure that you meet with the city manager so that you know what the big issues are, what the challenges are. Make sure you go to a meeting. If you're trying to join a board, make sure you've attended that meeting so that you understand the dynamic. Is it healthy? Is it stale? Is it really, really fractured? And how do to Sue's point about bringing the financial skills in, are you bringing a skill set that you should be highlighting when you're campaigning, right? And so that's really important to think about, because if you are running for a council and you've never been to a council meeting, that's probably going to be problematic for you on the campaign because your opponents can point that out. And so anyway, so just really think about, what is happening, and that'll help you be a better candidate, right? I mean, that's something that you can bring to the whole thing. And then I would just add to your question about what's really important to reflect on is what your plan is for continuing to meet your commitments. Because I still had to work full time, and I still had 2 teenagers, and I still really wanted to be married at the end of my campaign. And so, you ask my kids, they'll tell you it was way more impactful, my 13-month campaign for clerk, than they thought it would be. And so, and they understood. But I live with 3 introverts. So it was important that they understood how they were going to help and how they weren't going to help, and what I was really left to do on my own. So it's important to have all that defined. And I also was in a position in my job at the time to take a leave of absence that I needed to in order to really focus on the campaign. So there were times that I did take, use all of my vacation and then some to make sure that I had enough time to do what I needed to do. So
the other thing, I'd meet with your fellow council members. If you're running for a city council, meet with them. I've met with a couple that are already running this coming year. I'm not up till 2026, so I'm not running. But and I'm meeting 2 more Friday morning. And we've always been very open to meeting with anybody. I even met with all my opponents 2 years ago. Being at my 3rd term, it was a little easier to meet with them. But most council members are pretty willing to talk about what's going on, what the issues are, because they do know if you win and you're on there, you want to develop a rapport with these people, as Paul was saying, and know what the issues are and be able to at least have a sense of those people. And they're usually all very accommodating and being willing to talk to you and give advice.
But I would say on that point, other things that have come up in our workshops, don't ask your city clerk to endorse you. They can't. It's their job. And they're going to share all the helpful information with all the candidates. That's just sort of standard practice. Same with our staff. We don't make endorsements, and that's a really important part of the process. Some of your council members may or may not make endorsements depending on what's going on the council. I know people that just generally, they're an elected official and they just don't make endorsements for their colleagues or for anybody else. And you want to make sure that you understand what that culture is as you make your plan for getting those endorsements. And so, because you can imagine it's going to be awkward, but it's really important to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. And it's okay to have policy differences. And it's a healthy part of our democracy to be able to talk about all that. So I love Sue's advice about making sure that you're meeting with your opponents or potential opponents. I know that someone who is now a dear, dear, dear friend of mine, we started off a little awkward because he really wanted to run for the short-term 2-year seat on the Akalani's board. And that's what I was going to run for. And so he had all these reasons why I should run for the 4-year term and he was going to run for the 2-year term. And I just stood my ground. So I didn't have an opponent. So I got my $1,800 check back from the elections office because I didn't have to have a candidate statement and I just got appointed. And he didn't get his check back. And he ended up winning, but I was worried it was going to be a little frigid with us on our council, and we became dear, dear friends. And so, it's nice how that worked out. And so it does not always work out that way. Any last questions before we close for the night and before everybody finishes eating all the food? Before we go. Closing? Yeah, of course. Yeah. But I just want to make sure yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. I think I can get it more properly too. So you don't have to lean over so much.
Thank you. So regarding, I know, Ms. Sue, that you mentioned door-to-door knocking and a lot of that. So what about for communities that are bilingual or like my community in particular, predominantly Spanish speaking? Should I have someone with me like during all times so there's no language barrier or I can get the message across? Would that be well, I know it would be beneficial, but do you feel like that's a necessity?
Great question.
It would be helpful if you had somebody, but the other option is to have a brochure that's got both languages on it, so that even you can at least learn a couple words like "Hi, how are you?" And if they realize they can't speak English, then you can just give them your brochure. If you don't have somebody with you that can speak bilingual, at least you've got information to hand them in their language, and that's really appreciated. In my city it was very complicated because we have a fairly large group of Eastern European. Well, I don't even know what language those are, but really, most people really just appreciate the fact that you've knocked on their door, and that you've taken the time to go out and meet them. That is 9/10 of it is just them being appreciative of you knocking on their door and handing them something and indicating you care about it. That's the bulk of it. So whether somebody speaks that language or you have something bilingual to hand them, the fact that you showed up is 9/10 of it. Yeah.
No.
Okay, well, why don't we do our kind of closing thoughts?
I just want to say, it's been a fascinating 10 years, and I just wanted to sort of talk about a couple stories. Things you want to focus on. When I came into city council, our capital improvement projects were way behind, and we were in desperate need of a new library. And so I was pretty focused on what I wanted to get accomplished. And we opened our brand new library in 2022 after running a sales tax measure in 2016 that also covers a lot of our capital projects. And, really try to figure out what your city needs you to help them with in order to get on council and then be able to deliver. And then the other thing I'd say is really take the time to understand what's going on in your city and to know your staff. I'll give you an example. I was asked, Pleasant Hill, for some strange reason, was the first city to ever issue an online solar application. Just because we have this unique building official that happened to be involved in this. And so Secretary Granholm was coming to Berkeley to promote this, and they said, can you go and have your picture taken with her? I'm like, sure, I can do that. And that morning, as I was getting ready to leave, I got a call from the undersecretary, would you mind taking some questions from her? And I thought, oh, God, I got to answer questions about this. Luckily, I knew the building official to call and get information that I could answer right away. And so it was really important. I knew who to call and that I had made relationships with these staff members so I could call and get that information. And then I got there, and they said, great, you're speaking after Libby Schaff. And I'm like, what? I have now gone from standing for a picture to having to speak after Secretary Granholm and Mayor Libby Schaff. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And anyway, so again, I called the building official back and said, all right, now you're gonna have to give me some more information. But, knowing those staff members to call when you need something, there's not a garbage pickup like there should have been. Things like that. It's really helpful. You're supposed to sort of go through your city manager, but your poor city manager, if you had to call him every time somebody called to complain to you about something or ask a question, the poor guy would never get his job done. So, I know them well enough to say, hey, can you call so-and-so or get this thing done? And the staff really appreciates you knowing them as well. So I just encourage you, as you get into it, know as many people as you can on your staff, know your fellow council members, because they're a wealth of knowledge on all sorts of stuff. It really helps as you go through the process, and they end up being great friends as well. So those are just a couple pieces of advice as you go into those fields, things to remember.
Yep. And congratulations on that library. It's a really unfinished business here in El Cerrito, and something after 8 years I'm leaving and very upset. I'll still be involved, but I won't be a city councilman anymore. One thing I just want to let people know, that whether you're running a campaign or you win and you're an elected official, there may come a time when you have a crisis. You're a public official. It could be a shooting, it could be a fire, it could be a lot of stuff. And you have to know how to be ready for that and to be ready to deal with your mind and focus. When I was mayor in 2021, it was kind of everything coming together. We had COVID. Our city was financially strapped, and the state auditor had said you have to do all these things to get financially together. Black Lives Matter and our police department, we were having lots of demonstrations then, and to cut the police department, what do you do? It was a very tough time for me, and I came to the point of having a mantra that kind of helped me personally about why I ran and what I should do. And it's very simple. I mean, I'll share it with you. It was basically I ran. I just said, step up, be brave, and enjoy it. This is what an elected official is supposed to be doing. So get in there and deal with this. And I got through it. So congratulations. If any of you want to run, step up, be brave, and enjoy it. Okay? Thank you very much.
That's a perfect way to end it. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for stepping up. Thank you for being brave. And thank you all for coming tonight. Please contact our office if you have any questions. We look forward to working with you and getting you qualified for the ballot. Congratulations and good night. Oh, and fill out your surveys.